begin with a public hearing. Anyone other than the applicant or the representative wishing to speak must register and submit the registration slip to the zoning administrator at this time. Following the public hearing, the board will conduct its monthly business meeting, at which time we will vote on the application. You may stay for the meeting and hear how the application was decided, or you may leave following the hearing. The applicant and town board will be sent a copy of tonight's decision. Any other person wishing to receive a copy of a decision can sign the sheet on the table at the front of the room. Those of you wishing immediate knowledge of the outcome of these proceedings may call the county zoning office tomorrow morning. The procedure we will follow for the hearing tonight on each application is, after each application is read, the applicant, their agent, or representative will have the opportunity to present their application, followed by any questions or comments from the board. Then all correspondence will be read. Then others in favor will have a chance to speak. Anyone objecting will then have a chance to speak. I will then ask for a summary of the board's field observations and any staff comments. Finally, the applicant will be allowed a chance for a brief rebuttal if they wish. Anyone wishing to speak should use the microphone in the front here at the podium, state their name, and direct their comments to the board. I ask that all testimony be kept brief, no more than 5 minutes, and to the point. If you are testifying as a nearby landowner, please tell us where your property is located relative to the subject property. Tonight's hearing will be recorded, and the recordings will become part of the record. Comments that are based on hearsay or secondhand information, as well as slanderous or prejudicial remarks, will be ruled out of order. The board has looked at all the properties, and the record will reflect these observations. Any person affected by an administrative decision of this board has 30 days from the filing of tonight's decision to make an appeal. Such appeal shall be heard by the Waushara County Circuit Court. Information is available from the Clerk of Court's office and qualified legal counsel. The county assumes no liability and makes no warranty as to the legality of any construction commenced prior to the expiration of this 30-day period. I will now introduce the board. Seated to my left is Larry Tim, Mark Schumacher, John Shirk, John Bentz. I'm Kevin Fitzgerald, and this is our zoning administrator, Terry Dopp. That's it. We will read. The public notice is hereby given to all persons in the county of Waushara. Okay. The following items will be considered by the Board of Adjustment. Variance. Martin P. and Jill A. Whiskey, Berlin, Wisconsin, have made application for a variance after the fact in accordance with Section 58-232 sub 3 of the Waushara County Zoning Code to allow a 32 by 46 two-story detached garage with a 4-foot by 18-foot bump out to remain at a height of 23 feet, 18 feet maximum allowed, and to have a second story detached accessory buildings limited to 1 story in the RS-20 single-family residential zone within the shoreline area. Location: an approximate 2.34 acre parcel of land known as Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map number 5851, being part of the S1/2 of Government Lot 1, Section 2, T19N, R13E, Town of Poisippi, Lake Poygan. Address: N4816 35th Drive. Will the applicant please step to the podium? Martin, you want to go ahead and give us a little spiel about what you're requesting and why?
Well, the main argument that I would have,
Talk into the microphone, please. Thank you.
the main argument I would have here is to argue the two-story. The two-story building would be described as two matching walls, 8 foot in height or higher. My building does not have 2 stories. It has an attic. The inside of the attic is, the dimension is 14 feet, the length of the building. The side studs are 5 foot tall that follow the 812 pitch. In the center, you can walk 4 feet. I have photos I made today. I went up there for the 3rd time today. So if you'd like to see pictures of
Sure.
it. The other day when you guys were in here, I didn't think anybody wanted to struggle up the ladder. But, so it was just designed to look like the house. 812 on the gables and 1412 on the bump out. And to meet the height, I mean, not that we didn't know anything about the height restriction, but to meet that, this roof pitch would have to be like a 2.5, 12. It wouldn't even make us.
Start with John on there, show him.
Here's a view. Here's my mug. I'm staying in a 5-foot wall, and this is the 812 up the side there. There's a 4-foot straight. Not on the light up there, so you can kind of see it. That's the trap door from the back.
Oh, yeah.
That's the
You said 5-foot sidewalls?
5 foot.
5 foot, yep. And then the 812 pitch, so you said about how much of it you can walk in?
There's 4 foot on the side.
4 foot across the trusses
What's it
there?
make it, about 7?
What's that?
With the pitches, it make it about 7? 7 feet?
The height?
Yeah.
I would say. I didn't measure that.
Sure. I've seen it, you can show them.
Can you send us those pictures too, so we have them? Because it's kind of hard to
For the record.
add them into the record. Unless we just keep your,
Figure it out. There's the 5-foot wall. I just put my head up in the rafters. That'll be right here. And then follows the 812 side. This is the long way. There's nothing.
What is the long way? What's the distance? The length of the garage?
44, 46, 47. And there's nothing to the bump out. That's all just railing.
Third floor up there?
can you go back and do your testimony in the microphone, please? Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, I got some questions for you.
Sure.
Has there been a recent survey?
A recent survey? How recent?
Before you built the house?
Yeah. I mean, when I bought the property.
When was that?
I think maybe 6 years ago.
About 2010? Thank you.
And that was, when we were out on the property, you said that the property was redivided.
Yeah.
And that's when it was redivided and then you bought it?
I don't know how long he had it. Ron Eben bought the whole thing with that brick house to the north that sits
Yep.
on the angle.
Yep.
And he didn't, it was 5 lots, 60 feet each or something like that, and he didn't like the thought of ever having such small lots, so he changed it to 3 lots.
Okay,
So
so
we all got about 140 feet. Mine's
So-
900 feet deep by one, I think mine's 130.
so it was 5 lots and he actually made the lots bigger into 3.
Right.
Okay.
Are the lot lines still marked, do you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Can you explain how we arrived here at this point today?
Well, we thought everything was cool. Larry came to do the final assessment. What had even been the final? Remember?
Pardon?
When you came to do the assessment, I called you on something.
The spring I came out there.
That was the spring. Yeah, and you said the building wasn't listed on my thing, that I didn't have a permit for it. I said, it's news to me, you know, I thought it was on the house. I don't know, I don't know how this works. That'd be my builder's here as well. But I do recall him saying that the building inspector told him that it wasn't necessary to have a building permit to build an outbuilding in Waushara County. So, and the slab was there for a long time, and away they went, and they built the building. And then I called Larry and said, well, what now? You know, I don't have a permit, how do I make this right? He said, well, you just call the county. They said, instead of $50, it's 100, but send in your plans and stuff. I said, fine. And Rick Ertl said that the height restriction was 18 feet. It was news. Actually, the application that I was given, it says 35, but that doesn't really matter. It's 23 feet tall. We can't, no sense in really pointing fingers to who and why. It's,
Are you or your builder aware of the difference between a zoning permit and a land use and a building permit?
I'm not. Well, I'm getting to learn more.
Are you or your builder aware of when building permits are required?
Apparently not. Me.
Now?
Yeah.
Are you or your builder aware when zoning land use permits are required?
Yeah, I am now.
Are you or your builder aware that zoning land use permits are not valid indefinitely, but rather have an expiration date? Are you or your builder aware of what was on your original zoning land use permit?
So your permit was issued in 2014, according to the copy we have here. And then I think when we were out on the property, I think you said it took about 17 months. Didn't you say to complete everything?
From the start to
Yeah.
to dig to finish.
Right.
Till we moved in.
Okay, oh, till you moved in.
Well, till we started to move stuff. We're not
Sure.
still all in there yet.
Okay, okay.
Kevin, if I can quick ask a question. When you and your builder were putting up your house, there probably was a white sign, a permit
Yeah.
on a post.
Yeah.
You didn't think you needed one for the garage, though? It's complete, different building? Your builder didn't think so?
Well, he can talk in a minute here. He's here with me. Like I said, he was told that we didn't need a building permit for the outbuilding. That's what I'm told.
Sounds like a misunderstanding.
Do you still have the zoning permit that was issued for the home?
You got me hanging on your sign? If I do, probably somewhere
Unknown
in
at
my
this
pile
time?
of papers.
Unknown at this time?
Yeah.
Can you tell us why you planned this garage with a second story at this overall height?
Well, it's not a second story, as I tried to explain, but the height is just to match the house.
That's what you mentioned when we did the
Yeah.
on-site, is you wanted to match
It's
the,
the same roof pitch as the house. There's
Right.
812s on the gables and the 1412 looking at it by the bump out. The height got to be what it got to be, you know.
you said the second story you're gonna use for storage, or the upstairs, whatever you wanna
Maybe.
call it. Attic,
just-
upstairs, whatever. It's storage.
Build the trusses like this or like this is the same.
Are you planning on insulating or heating either the downstairs or the upstairs?
I would hope to someday, but no immediate plan to do that, you know. Someday if I have time to putz around.
You would heat the upstairs too?
No.
It's the downstairs.
The second story, as we call it, you call it the attic.
Yeah.
What are you going to be, what's it going to be used for?
Probably nothing, but it gives you an option of hiding the Christmas stuff so you don't know where you put it the following year. There's a pull-down ladder. And, I mean, you have to go up the ladder and down the ladder, facing the ladder. It's not permanent stairwell by any means.
Have you talked to the town board neighbors about this?
Town board neighbors.
Town board and the neighbors?
Yeah, my neighbors, yeah. Everybody knows.
How about the town board?
I talked to Larry Albright. That'd be the only person I talked to.
How will you deal with stormwater runoff from the garage and any potential for erosion?
Through there with all the rain we've had, nothing's happening.
Gutters on it or anything?
I didn't choose to put gutters on there yet. There's just a little dent in the ground about this much. It's pretty firm and it's seeded well.
What type of foundation is the garage on?
Slab.
How far is the highest point of the roof of the garage from the final grade? I have a question here to ask you. Describe what you plan to do to both the upstairs and downstairs of the garage to finish it off, but I think you've already answered that.
There's no finishing upstairs. It's got a floor in it. I can set stuff up there.
You've already answered the upstairs will be for storage. How much filling and grading was done?
Filling and grading?
Hauled a lot of sand or fill, must have hauled something in there to flatten it out.
There, we just move stuff around. Do you remember?
Oh. Okay. Okay.
Gravel for the forms? Is that what
Probably
you
for the slab.
Any other improvements planned?
On the property? You mean structures? No. No structures.
There is an open lean-to on the garage that wasn't noted on the application, so we'll need to make a note of that. Do you know what the size of that is?
Covered, it wasn't on your little print that I gave you. I think it's I think the floor distance from the pole I figured was like 13 feet. And then the depth is the same as
Of the garage, 46, you
no,
said?
that would be the 32 side.
Oh, the 32 side, okay. So roughly about 13 by 32 then, you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was it?
13 by 32?
It's a lean-to.
And you don't plan on closing
You
it?
guys were all there the
Yep.
other day, right?
Yep.
But it's not on the plans, and we didn't measure it, so we don't know how big it is.
Pardon me?
It's not on the plans, and we didn't measure it, so
Oh,
we
yeah,
don't
it's
know how
on
big it
this
is.
plan.
Yeah, we don't have that.
Okay.
I just realized that today when I figured that might be one of the questions.
You don't have any plans for enclosing it?
No.
Regarding setbacks for the garage, you're okay with the road and the side lot,
Oh,
correct?
yeah, we're double.
So we're all right?
Your plan showed 15 feet from the side lot, that's the closest one?
Yeah.
And that's the lot line to the north?
Correct.
Okay.
Have you considered any options into making the building according to code? Can you explain to us why the code is unnecessarily burdensome in this case?
Well, because I'm in the country, kinds of tall barns and buildings in the area. It's not, it's just not a issue. It, had I put that it was 18 feet, nobody would have came and measured it. It's, I don't know if I answered the question correctly or not.
I'll ask you again, why is it unnecessarily burdensome in this case? I don't think you answered the question.
Oh. Maybe don't understand what answer you're looking for.
But there's agricultural land to the west of you, correct?
Yeah,
That's where you said they were spreading manure.
yeah.
And there isn't any height, the 18 feet doesn't apply in the
Right.
agricultural zone, right?
I mean, it's a big country lot, large tree line. You really can't even see my building unless you peek in my driveway or pull in there. I mean, not that it's offensive. I wouldn't mind living in it.
Well, and it's not offensive to you folks or your neighbors probably either, but it kind of sets a precedent because we have to look at the entire county, not just your lot.
Yeah,
So our entire county is zoned for purposes.
right.
So while it may not be a burden to you or,
I believe if we would have known the proper way to apply for this permit, and this whole house and outbuilding plan would have been presented properly, you would have had absolutely no problem.
Well, the one thing we noted when we were out there, there's a building immediately to the south of you
Yeah,
that is about the same height,
yeah, it's taller.
maybe a little taller than 23 feet, but it's my understanding that was built before the
It was.
18-foot height limitation,
It was.
correct?
You had asked me to research that, and it was built in 2005.
Five.
And there was no height restriction in the
Okay.
residential zone at that time. The first time we had a height restriction was in 2008, and we started at 15 feet.
Oh,
And
okay.
then that was kind of a problem for a lot of people, so we actually raised it to 18 feet in 2010.
Green Lake went back to 25 because of the same problems. With the styles of houses today, nobody wants to see a trailer, bunch of trailer houses in the countryside, with 212s, 312 roofs. That,
Do you have any ideas that would help to make sure this garage remains in compliance with the intent of the code?
repeat that again, please?
Sure. Do you have any ideas that would help to make sure that this garage remains in compliance with the intent of the code? What could you say to the committee that would show us that you won't develop the second story or whatever?
There is no second story. I don't need that much space. The attic is just something you do because it's free. And the only reason there's a stairwell is because there's a ceiling in it. If I ever collect so much junk that I need to use it, there's no way I would make that a room up there. It's just not.
so if we were to approve it with making a restriction that you would sign an affidavit that there would never be any plumbing or anyone living there, you'd be willing to sign an affidavit to that effect? Thank you.
Are there any windows in
No,
that
there's no window.
now? And what is the height of the first floor ceiling? That's rather high, if I remember.
It's 9 foot on the outside, but it's bumped up in the middle for that center door. The center door is 9'6", so I believe it's another at least 6 inches above that.
10-foot
In the
ceiling
center,
height.
above the center door is would be 10 foot or thereabout.
Wasn't flat? I was even in there.
It's flat, yeah.
I mean, so it's
Center's
10
flat
foot.
and then it bumps down because the small doors are 8 foot. So would you say that's a 9-foot ceiling? 9 foot on the end.
If the board grants an approval, do you know what permits you would need?
Pardon me?
The board would approve your variance. Do you know what permits you would need?
you've already applied for a permit for
You don't
this
have one.
garage, but you don't have it, you don't have it approved yet because we have to go through a variance. So you've made all the applications to,
Yeah, it's a land use permit.
yep, right.
Mr. Benz, anything?
No, that's it.
John?
No, I'm good.
Mark?
Nope, I have no further
Lori?
questions.
I have one question. You ever see this pamphlet before?
I think so. I don't recall what
Have?
it is. I think it's in my file.
When you buy a property in the county, they mail it to you. And here at the top, it talks about accessory buildings. You remember seeing this and reading this, that a permit is necessary for any accessory buildings?
I don't remember now, but
Okay, anything else? Mr. All correspondence?
There is no correspondence?
Yes.
You can have a seat, thank you.
Anyone in favor?
There's no correspondence? I thought somebody mentioned in the onsite that the township was in favor of it.
Yeah, but they didn't tell us.
They told me to give you that information.
Oh.
I was at the meeting where they made the decision.
Okay, because usually Larry calls or something and I don't have anything.
Is
So
that
then-
part of the minutes of the town board meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
So then, for the record, the town board has stated to you that they have no objections?
correct. They made a motion to that effect.
Oh, okay, thank you.
It was carried.
Mr. John Loberg, please. Come on up. Mr. Loberg is here to speak in favor of the application. Please speak into the microphone.
The, I built a house for Tim Shiwi, and this is where I think it got really kind of goofed up, is I had asked John about a garage on that, and I asked him if we needed a permit for that, and he said no. And so I called John again for Marty's, and again, he said no. So I don't know, Marty doesn't need a permit for the garage, it's an outbuilding. I guess, so he still doesn't need a permit.
Doesn't need a building permit. Doesn't need one from John Siebert.
See, that, okay, and this is where I think it, I've been doing this for 44 years, and in Green Lake, I thought John Siebert was actually part of the zoning, and that's where the mistake came on my part. And it was a bad mistake after the fact, but I thought John was a guy that I could talk to and ask, just like, and now I find out it's really you. So that's where I think the whole thing happened. It started with, I just called John, said, well, do I need a permit? And he said no. So, at that point, I wished he would have said, you know what, you better go into the zoning office and get something. And I didn't. And, so.
When you got the permit for the house, though, you got one from the zoning office and one from the building inspector.
Right, and I knew I had to, and I did call, and you can ask him, I did call him 2 times on that, and both times he said no. But John's a good person. I'd never want to throw him under the bus. He's probably the best person you have for permit, for that kind of thing, so.
You were talking about two different things.
Well, yes and
He's the
no.
building inspector.
I
This is
know, but
zoning.
I had thought John was part of the zoning, and that's the mistake. And I guess it does boil down to,
When you submitted the plans, or the plans we have on file here, have no mention of the garage.
right, there never was for me anyways, at that point, Marty had said someday he's gonna build a garage, but I told Marty at that same time, you don't need a permit for a garage. So, that was my mistake. Bad one too. I hope it doesn't hurt me. But, so, anyways, I don't know. Is that all?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
gentleman didn't know whether he was in favor or opposed, so.
Mr. Schroeder.
Gotta have
We'd like to get your picture on
Yeah,
the
your
TV
lovely
up there.
voice won't be recorded.
Give him your best smile.
Right. I'm Keith Schrader. I bought the property north of County H on the corner of 35th, 60 acres there. So even though my address is Fremont, I live in Winnebago County, but I bought some property there. And I've been came here tonight for a couple reasons. I've never owned property in Waushara County before, or did buildings or anything like that. So I came here to see what I could learn and do things. And I got some land use permits from you. I did file for a building permit that I didn't put up yet, but I'm trying to learn things here and how things go. But I think Marty and Jill's place is a good addition to the neighborhood. It's done, and it's done tastefully, done right, and looks good. I hope you figure out a way to work a variance for this case. Thank you.
And your property is just north of H?
North of H goes, I got the, one thing your county does a good job, better than
Only one.
the other three counties I have. You keep us informed as landowners when something's happening nearby. I own a commercial building in downtown Dale. I own property in Wapaka County. I live in Winnebago County. In this county, there's something coming from you guys all the time. And the people that I had to work with so far have did a great job. So I came down here and I got 60 acres right on it. It follows H from kind of like Pony Creek around to 35th and jogs behind Tanvis's and Saxon's place.
So you're just about a quarter-mile north of the property, give or take?
Their property,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. Just so I know where you are. You bet. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other one?
Nope, that's it.
Staff comments?
Before you do that,
Wait.
can I make a statement?
Sure, Larry, go ahead.
Into the mic.
I just wanted to state for the record that I'm an assessor for 2 different townships in Waushara County. And I have run into probably a half a dozen cases in the last 6 months, or not in 6 months, the last 2 years, of where people have built something without a permit. And when I ask them why they didn't get a permit, they tell me the zoning office said they didn't need one. Now, I don't know who they talked, I didn't go into detail to find out who they talked to at the zoning office, maybe I should have. But this is a problem. And I think it needs to be addressed.
And we are working on that every day, all the time. I do think sometimes it's the quality of the question. You know, obviously in this case, he asked a building inspector if he needed a permit, and the building inspector probably assumed that a builder knew who he was asking and what he was asking. You know, I mean, it's kind of the quality of the question.
And maybe it's,
But
maybe
John
the question,
very often will now, and has in the past, said, but you need to check with the zoning office. We were just as guilty of that sometimes too, and no, you don't need a zoning permit, but yes, you do need to check with the building inspector, because sometimes they don't need one from us, but they need one from the building inspector. So we both worked on that in
and
the
I think
last year
sometimes
and a half.
it,
So I
it's
hope
the-
you don't hear that much anymore, but
but
it's always gonna be the quality of the question.
I think sometimes it's the nature of the question. They may ask, does it have to be inspected? And if it's a garage, it probably doesn't have to be inspected. You know, and things get misconstrued that way.
But they have to submit plans for the garage.
For a land use or zoning permit, correct. Yep.
Inherent problem with building and zoning permits is usually once a landowner has been through it all and knows everything, then they never have to use it again. You know, that's the problem.
I've also had people on the phone that, when I'm done asking them questions, they say to me, well, do you need to know the names and ages of my children and, you know, where I'm going on vacation next week? And it's like, well, sometimes you have to ask a lot of questions, and if you don't ask the right questions, you don't always find out exactly what they're doing either. So we do try very hard, and we're going to keep trying very
don't think it's necessarily the zoning office as much as the building inspector.
Probably both. It's probably both. Sure. Yeah, and we did that as a convenience to the builders, so they didn't have to go to two different places all the time. Seems like.
Staff comments, you're up.
For the record, the board has previously been furnished with a copy of the site plan and all the other pertinent data for this, and nope, there's no other applications. They have also visited the property and viewed the proposal and the location on site. This time I'd like to explain a little bit about variances. Variances ask for a relaxation of a dimensional standard in the code. The decision to grant a variance must be backed by substantive reasons, which include, number one, that the code is unnecessarily burdensome and the landowner is not able to enact a permitted use without a relaxation of the dimensional standard. Two, there are unique limitations on the property that prevent the landowner from meeting the required dimensional standard. And three, if the variance is granted, no harm will be done to the public interest or the zoning code. It is the applicant's responsibility to present the case and provide that burden of proof as to why the variance should be granted. The personal situation of the applicant, financial hardship, convenience, a growing family, nearby violations, none of these can be considered as valid reasons to grant a variance. When the board visited the property, they noted that the garage was constructed fairly recently, that the garage has a carport or lean-to addition that was not noted on the site plan, that the garage is large enough that it would need a land use or zoning permit authorizing its construction as well as the garage, that the garage has a second story that meets the zoning's definition of a second story. You need to look at the zoning code, and we will continue to call it a second story because it meets our definition of a second story, that the overall design and roof line matches that of the home, that the upper portion of the garage does not currently have windows, that the side yard setback is noted to be 15 feet on the site plan supplied by the landowner, and that is twice the minimum setback required for detached accessory buildings in all zones in Waushara County, and that the neighbor has a garage that is similar in height that was constructed prior to the county adopting a lower height regulation for detached accessory buildings in residential zones. One of the reasons that we did do the lower height was to keep garages from having second stories. These have notoriously become, bunk houses or add-on living spaces, and on a lot of lake lots, when the kids grow up and start to come home, they look for their own space, and it blossoms out of control. So there is a reason why we did it, and we probably are not going to raise it anytime soon because we do have a lot of problems with that. My other comments would be, after the fact variances are always difficult. It is hard to ignore the structure that's been built without permits and now is not in compliance with the code requirements, and it's difficult to understand how anyone in this day and age can actually think that there are no permits required for building structures such as these. But neither of these facts should influence the board either favorably or unfavorably. The way to handle this situation fairly, in my eyes, is if the board can separate themselves from the fact that the garage is already there. The board should focus on whether there is suitable evidence provided by the applicant that shows, one, the property is unique, two, that there is a hardship or that the code is unnecessarily burdensome in this case, and three, that the code would not be undermined if the variance were to be granted. They can even look at mitigation items to try to make sure that the code would not be undermined if the variance were to be granted. And if they find that the evidence has been presented that shows all three of these items to be true, then the variance should be granted. If they do not find all three criteria have been met, then the variance should be denied. it's really kind of just thinking of it before it was ever built, pretend it's not there, here's the plans, what has been presented, and have you met those three criteria for the granting of a variance? And that's it for my comments.
Rebuttal by the applicant. Anything to come back? Builder, anything come back? Speak for him? Nothing? Okay. At this time, this board is gonna go in that little room right outside the door. You're welcome to come if you like. And the zoning board will take our spot and have their hearings. Fishing rods back there.
Not packed, but he's getting ready. Yeah, he loves that fishing trip. I keep telling him you should work for two. I keep telling him you should work for 2 weeks instead of just one.
Bus is jam-packed. Some of us are going in a car.
Are you really? Yeah. Oh, good for you.
Ask Terry how much of that you had to read.
I'll read it.
I don't want to start.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Sorry. Steer me through this. Okay, you'll be fine. Read that first.
You get extra for tonight's meeting.
I know, yeah, I'm waiting for the last extra.
You get the
that I-
same thing Mark gets. You get the same thing Mark gets. Need one of those? So read that. That'll call the meeting to order. And tell them
Wish the mics are turned on.
rules and then
Have turned on tonight.
first conditional use is Aaron Young.
I scratched off a few things on there that,
And you have a little cheat board here.
I'm trying to find. Yeah, we scratched off these couple of things, he doesn't need to know that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Call the meeting.
yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
And the applicant will come up and we do the committee questions.
Schedule, I'll do that. I will call this meeting of the Waushara County Planning and Zoning Committee to order. This meeting will be conducted in the same manner as the applications heard by the Board of Adjustment. Please remember to keep your comments brief, no more than 5 minutes, and relative to the matter at hand. Anyone other than the applicant or the representative wishing to speak at this meeting must have registered. Anyone who has not should do so immediately and submit the registration slip to the zoning administrator. The committee has looked at all the properties and the record will reflect these observations. Following the public hearing, the committee will conduct their monthly business meeting, at which time we will vote on the applications. You may stay and hear how the applications are decided, or you may leave following the public hearing. Any person affected by an administrative decision of this committee has 10 days from the filing of tonight's decision to file an appeal. Such appeals are heard by the Waushara County Board of Adjustment. Information and applications are available from the county zoning office. The county assumes no liability and makes no warranty as to the legality of any construction commenced prior to the expiration of this 10-day period. I will now introduce the committee. To my left is Bob Wadle and Donna Collada and Mike Kapp and Russ Keisey. And my name is Fred Gellerup, and the zoning administrator is Terry Puckstad. Got all that? Yep. Okay. And that's all I need from that sheet, right? That goes to you. The first application for tonight is for a conditional use. Adam Young, Pine River, Wisconsin, has made application for a conditional use in accordance with sections 58-236 and 58-454, parentheses 34, of the Waushara County Zoning Code to conditionally establish a home-based business offering vehicle repair and service work in the AG General Agricultural Zone within the shoreland area. The location is an approximate 12.86 acre parcel of land known as Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map number 4573, being the northwest 1/4 of the northeast 1/4, section 27, town of Saxville, address of W3445 Archer Avenue. Is the applicant here? Would you please come up and state your name for us?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen on the board. My name is Adam Young.
Okay. Now what?
Do you want to tell us anything about it, or?
Absolutely. First off, as I learned from that last meeting, I will not be building any new structures. Everything's already existing. I just plan on opening, being a sole proprietor, fixing cars from home. My shop already has a hoist. I have ASE certifications. I went to the tech for 2 years. I got my degree through there, so I'm not going to be some shade tree mechanic, if you will, offering shady service. My whole philosophy behind this is I've been a dealer tech now for about 3 years or so, and I see the dealer prices. Charging $110 an hour to fix a car to me isn't right. My goal is to provide dealer level service at independent rates. And as far as the actual conduct of the business, initially I will probably be just working part-time, as I still need to work a full-time job, support family, have insurance, and so on and so forth. As I progress, get my name out there a little bit more, it'll be full-time, 9 to 5. I don't plan on having more than 2 vehicles working on at a time, just for a sole purpose of, 1, the customer, and 2, going back and forth. It's just easier to keep that number smaller. I did call the the town chairman, and his only concern was how many cars I'd have outside, how it would appear. As I stated, I can have 3 full-size trucks in the shop at one time, completely unvisible. I would have additional parking to the north side of the shop, anticipating at the most 4 vehicles at a time. And I'm not just saying that to make it sound, oh, he's not going to have a bunch of cars out there. It also makes sense for me as well. If there's a vehicle sitting there, that means I didn't get paid for it. I'm not getting paid for it. So the onus is on me to keep them coming in and out. I guess in my mind, this all seems pretty straightforward. It's just going to be fixing cars from home. But I don't know what questions the board may have or any concerns.
We have a few questions, if you don't mind.
Oh, sir.
Has there been a recent survey done of the property?
Yes, we bought the house in 2012. I'm sorry, 2012 is when I got the Marine Corps. We bought it in 2014.
Okay. Do you know where your lot lines are?
Yes, sir.
You pretty much described your proposed business, and you did say you will be doing air conditioning work?
Yes. Once I get the machine, I am certified from the state to conduct the work.
And do you know the requirements for like the Freon containment and that?
Yes, sir.
Any body work or
No.
painting?
No, sir.
Will there be any employees outside of the immediate family? What sort of traffic do you think there will be, and what sort of parking do you anticipate that will be needed for the business?
As far as traffic, I don't see any. Are you asking in relation to additional traffic on the road?
Yeah, I guess that's probably what they're asking for.
Okay. I would anticipate maybe 1 or 2 vehicles a day additionally on the road coming to my house.
What about parts? Will you have parts delivery, or you?
I
run
will.
it?
I have been in contact with O'Reilly's, and they will deliver to my house. It'd be once a day. And it's delivered in a pickup truck. It's not going to be a big cube van or anything.
Okay, is there an advertising sign being planned?
There is an option of one. I've thought about one, but again, I don't know if there's any restrictions on that.
There
If
is.
there were to be,
There is, and that should be available from the zoning office. I believe it's 32 square feet, size
I
of a
had it-
sheet of
Really pretty big.
plywood.
that's what I had in mind, 4x8 sheet out in front of the house.
Okay. Are you aware of the state building codes and other state requirements? And do you know if they will be met if required?
Yes, sir. It was previously permitted and built, so
Will you need to do any filling or grading on your property to provide parking for the vehicles that need work on?
no. As the members of the board were there yesterday, sorry, I was at work, I wasn't able to be there. To the north side of the building where my plow truck is now?
Yep.
That's where the overflow parking will be.
Uh, What sort of sanitary facilities are you planning?
I'm not gonna have any because I'm not open to the public.
You're gonna go in the house?
Oh, myself? Yes.
What if someone had an emergency? Would you let them use your house?
Unfortunately, I can't, and because I know when I talked to the commercial building inspector, just the way the rules are, I can't allow it by off from the law.
Are there any floor drains planned in the building, and if so, how will these wastes be disposed of?
There are no floor drains planned.
Are you
Um,
planning any?
No, sir.
Okay.
Everything I do, as
Cleaned
far
up
as
with oil dry or?
the oil dry, and I also have 3 or 4 pans I just place out, collect antifreeze, used oil. It's better for the environment and better for me because I don't want to lay in it, slip in it, so on and so forth.
Are there any other additions or buildings planned other than what you've indicated on the site plan?
No, sir.
Will all activities be inside and no business or products stored outside except for up to possibly 4 cars waiting for service or to be picked up?
Yes, and also I had in my site plan on the north side, actually where that little alcove is, that's where I'll store whatever scrap I may have before it gets to the scrap yard. And that will not be visible from the road.
So that will be kept inside. If there's brake drums, mufflers, you leave that in there till you can take it to the,
Yes, sir.
okay.
It was actually outside, but the building has got a L in it.
Yes, ma'am, on that northwest corner there?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I saw it. And it would be hidden with your fence.
Yes, it's gonna be hidden by the fence and by the
any-
building and any vehicles that may be there.
So you are planning a fence then for the front portion?
Yes,
No, for the north side.
for the north side.
North side.
Yes, sir. And in addition to that, 2 years ago, I planted about 2,000 pine trees on
We
Oak
see
Field.
they're coming, so.
They are growing more than I could have imagined. I got about 9 inches of growth last year, and I'm already looking at about 6.
What sort of items will be stored in area indicated as scrap storage? Anything hazardous?
No, just brake rotors, scrap steel.
Will there be any scrapping of automobiles, say total demolition of them, or
No, sir, unless
for cannibalizing them for parts for other cars, or?
I happen to have an accident with my personal vehicle, absolutely not.
Okay. And I already asked you about the fence you're gonna put on the north boundary. When do you plan on completing this fence?
Within a month of, if I get the permit, within a month it'll be up.
Are you planning any changes to the driveway?
No,
Do you need a separate fire number for the business?
I do not.
If an approval is granted, when would you make the necessary improvements and start your operation?
The fence will be done within the month, really, before I get started. And hopefully start getting my name out there within a week or 2 and see how it progresses.
All right, That's all the questions I have.
I would like to ask a question about parking. Did you say anything about the parking? Is there adequate parking for customers and for vehicles that are waiting to be picked up, or?
Yes, sir. The customers will come directly into the driveway, park in front of the garage door. I will meet them out there, conduct business. And while it's waiting pickup, it'll be on the north side of the shop, between the shop and the pine trees.
One other question, do the dogs bite?
No, sir.
We sent Terry out first,
Yeah.
because they had a doggy door, we figured she could be the
They were pretty.
appetizer.
Nice, guys.
There was a, you mentioned your hours would be 9 to 5,
Yes, that'd be my planned hours.
and Monday through Saturday?
Monday through Friday.
Friday, no weekends?
Now, as far as business is concerned, if I have a personal project I'm working on, but that would be no different than last weekend.
Okay, that's all the questions I have at this time.
Okay.
Correspondence?
Oh, okay. Unless you have something else to add? Nope. you
Take
can
a
s-
seat.
no.
Thank you.
We do have one letter received on June 13th, addressed to the Washera County Planning and Zoning Committee. We are providing the following comment on conditional use application notifications submitted by Mr. Adam Young of Pine River. We are the owners, residents living at W3549 Archer Avenue, Pine River. Our property consists of 40 acres, which abuts the parcel owned by Mr. Young. We have spoken with Mr. Young about his plans and support his effort to establish a home business. We also discussed our concern, which is anything longer than short-term storage of customer vehicles outside. He assured us that no more than 4 to 6 customer vehicles would be parked outdoors at any one time and only for a limited time. Such storage, if limited to a period of 2 to 3 weeks, would be acceptable. Mr. Young assured us this was his plan. It is our understanding that if approved, this conditional use zoning exception remains with the property in the event of a sale. To this end, we would like the zoning commission to include language in the published exception detail limits on outdoor storage of non-owned vehicles. It should specify a maximum amount of customer vehicles, say 4 to 6, that can be located outdoors on the property at one time. It should also specify a maximum time period such vehicles can be continuously located there, limited to 15 days or so. Such provisions would prevent the nature of this conditional use approval from changing in the event of a change of property ownership. And that's, thank you, signed sincerely, Carol and Ann Wolotz, something like that. W-O-L-O-S-Z.
W-O,
L-O-S-Z. I don't know how to say it. Wolotz. No one registered to speak, either in favor or in opposition.
Anybody to speak for, just information? Okay. And, do you want to give us staff comments?
Sure. Once again, for the record, this committee has previously been furnished with a copy of the site plan and all the pertinent data for this and the other application that they will be considering tonight. And I would like to take a little time to explain about conditional use permits. All defined zones have uses that are permitted outright, such as building a home in the residential zone, or having a barn and farm animals in the agricultural zone. And in addition, there are a number of uses that may be permitted provided certain conditions are met. And that's what we are looking at here, a use that may be permitted provided that certain parameters can be complied with so the use remains in keeping with the surrounding uses and area. Some examples of conditional use permits are a dog kennel in the ag zone, unoccupied storage of a travel trailer on vacant property, again in the ag zone, a gravel pit, or a home-based business in our rural areas. In some counties, these permits are called special exception permits, so that might make it a little bit easier to understand. It is the landowner's responsibility to provide the information that shows the committee this use is still in keeping with the zone and area it is proposed for, and that the conditions placed on it will ensure it will be a good neighbor to the surrounding landowners. When the committee visited the property, they noted that if a fence was constructed as noted on the site plan, vehicles would be difficult to see from the road to the north until the pine trees can grow up, that there are no real close neighbors out there. The whole site is not readily visible from the road, and with proper management and conditions such as no scrapping and limiting the number of vehicles that can remain outside at any one time, the operation should fit into the neighborhood. And that's pretty it for my comments. Yes.
Does the applicant have any response or any questions, any further information, rebuttals? Okay. And
Next commissioner is.
okay. Yep.
Fred's our vice chair and he's in training, but he's doing really good, so.
Been in training for 37 years and I still don't have it down. The second application is a conditional use application. Gary Sanderfoot and Carl Hanschke, Kimberly, Wisconsin, have made application for a conditional use in accordance with sections 58-903, parentheses P, parentheses 3, of the Waushara County zoning code for filling and grading more than 10,000 square feet in area within 300 feet of the ordinary high water mark of Lake Poygan in the RS-20 residential single-family zone for the purpose of meeting the flood protection elevation for future building sites in the shoreland area. The location is an approximate 1.437 portion acres, right? Yeah, of an existing approximate 6.23 acre parcel of land being part of the north one-half of Government Lot 1, Section 2, Town of Poisippi, Lake Poygan, address W661, County Road H. Would the applicant come forward and state your name?
Good evening. My name's Dave Schmaltz. I work with McMahon Associates, and
Excuse me,
I'm
would you
representing Gary.
Would you spell that name, please?
SCHMALZ.
Thank you. And you're representing Mr.
I'm
Sanders?
representing Mr. Sanderfoot.
Okay.
I think the weather was so cold, he decided he's going to go back to Florida for a week or two.
Not a bad idea.
His daughter lives down there, and he had some business to attend to, so he asked me to take care of this. And actually, McMahon started on this last year, but I want to give a little history. Gary and his partner bought this property in 1992, and Gary has maintained it since then. Some years he doesn't get it cut as short as he had, but it is a very nice site. They have the lake on one side, two channels on the other sides. They have a 230-foot section of road and a big chunk of wetlands on one of the lot lines. When Gary bought it, he had it surveyed by Carroll Land Surveying. The pond was in really rough shape, so he went to the DNR and Corps of Engineers and got the permits. He used a company named Omni at that time from Appleton to get all the permits. They cleaned the pond out, and Gary has used it since then. They have picnicked out there and played out there. They had a smaller cottage on the south shore of Poygan that they still had, and they were going to build their dream home here. Well, work got in the way, and the kids grew up and moved away, and now, from 1992, Gary's wife, Marlene, says, why do we go cut grass so many times on Lake Poygan? And they go to their cottage, so they make a big trip. What we did last year is we did a topo survey. I'm a land surveyor. We verified the boundary survey, and we mapped the wetlands. We turned in a concurrence with the Wisconsin DNR and Corps of Engineers to verify our wetland boundary, and they agreed that we had mapped it properly. What we did is prepared a plan to fill out the buildable area, and that's defined 75 feet from the lake, 50 feet from the wetlands. And we would, after this permit, if we get one, we would go to the DNR and get their NOI grading permit if we're going to disturb over an acre. And after it's in place and properly done per the technical standards of FEMA, we will apply for a LOMA F. That's a fill permit to take this out of the 100-year floodplain. And Gary's going to market this, and if one person buys it and we have our permit, which is good for a year, what we would do is let that person fill the lot or take it over. Gary owns a Sanderfoot Wind, Sanderfoot Masonry, and they have all sorts of construction equipment. I think they're on 4 or 5 wind farm sites right now. His son, Tom, primarily runs the business. So Gary likes to play by the book. He has not trimmed a lot of brush on the lake. He hasn't done anything. I have a client that actually listens to me. It's pretty neat for a change to just hold off. Don't build anything and wait till everything's done. So after this meeting, if we're approved, then we would go to the Wisconsin Jackson DNR for the NOI permit if we're gonna disturb an acre. Now, you have to realize, I got a 1.3 acre site. I took the biggest footprint and got it permitted. Well, if one person buys it, they're not gonna build a 60,000 square foot house. The footprint would get much smaller, and if we don't fill over an acre, I don't need a DNR permit. And I'm very familiar with the FEMA rules and the technical standards, so that we would let Terry know what's going on. Gary's already talked to the sanitary district. This property is in the sanitary district, and they will take care of the holding tank through the sanitary district. Gary has talked to the town chairman and the county highway chairman, or road commissioner, and they said we could add a road if we wanted to. But when we looked at the site the other day, the driveway is a 2-track, 12, 14 feet wide. They're gonna leave that driveway. My recommendation is not to try to put a road in. We would impact wetlands, and it would just be a real tough sell. So I would like to leave it the way it is, and maybe get 2 homes on it. And that's all that we would be applying for, realizing we'd have to come and get extra permits and all the other stuff that we would have to do. So, any questions?
There will be some, but
I'm ready.
so should I read the questions, Mr. Chair?
Sure, would you please?
Has there been a recent survey on the property?
Yes, 2014, or 2015, sorry.
And according to what you had mapped out, you obviously know where the lot lines are.
Yes, sir.
And you explained that you want to get this permit to do some filling so that the potential would be there to build 2 homes possibly?
2 or 3, I think I need at least 100 feet of frontage, and we got 220. So if we would want to do 3 homes, that would be a different committee I'd have to come and visit. But for right now, I think we have enough frontage for 2 homes.
Okay, so that was my next question. How many lots or building sites? What sort of erosion control measures are you planning on employing while the work is being done?
Complete silt fence around any disturbed areas.
Okay, have you reviewed these plans with Waushara County Land Conservation
We
Department?
have not prepared any plans. We need to get the permit to allow the filling first,
But you would work with them?
of course.
Are you aware of the 35-foot vegetation protection area required along the shoreline of navigable waterways?
Yes, I told my client to leave it in place, and the committee, I pointed it out to them, he has not touched the shoreland.
And you are not planning on any filling or grading within the area close to the lake or pond?
Fill limits were actually shown on a map, and we had them physically marked in the field, 35 feet from the lake and 20 foot from any wetlands. That's the start of filling. Then you would come back up to the 2.5 foot elevation. The one thing I didn't say, when you drove in on H, and we drove into the driveway, H is at the elevation we'd filter. That's 2.5 feet above the under your floodplain. So as a point of reference, if you think that's, we
You
could.
had the signs or the lats were marked also?
Yes,
so-
that's correct.
How far away will you keep the fill from the wetlands? Maybe you've answered.
At least 20 feet, and it would be marked out by a silt fence that would be installed.
And where will this fill come from?
We don't know yet. If we could find somebody that needs a pond, they have enough equipment and dump trucks that somebody might get a free pond. You'd see.
Russ, you need a pond on your farm? If approved, what is your timeline for the filling and grading of the,
It has to be done within 1 year per the permit.
do you plan on stabilizing the lot with vegetation as soon as the filling and grading is completed?
For the DNR, it has to be done within 7 days after the placement of the fill for their erosion control permit.
Okay.
We would meet that requirement.
Once the filling and grading is complete, when do you anticipate you or someone else would start construction of any homes or buildings?
Probably 6 weeks to 6 months after the property is sold, depending on what type of structure they want to put up, and architects and everything else.
Okay, how long do you expect it will be before the filling and grading is done and the site is stabilized?
I would like to do it this year, but it just depends. We have next year, the first part that we could do it into. It would be within a year.
And per the drawing and the stakes that you had out there, how large an area is that will be disturbed or filled?
The potential that we marked out is 1.3 acres, give or take, and that would just be the total area that is allowed buildable.
Okay.
And I don't think would fill all that, but wouldn't it be a shame to not ask for enough? So we marked out the whole area and said, yeah, we might fill this, but I can't envision filling up that much. And if we would break it into 2 lots, we would actually put some drainage
will the finished grades of this filling project divert any water, stormwater onto neighboring properties? Will the new grades divert more stormwater to the lake? Okay. Will it will be diverted into the existing wetlands, I presume then?
The lay of the land right now is quite flat. It's just raised up, and there's a small hump in the middle, so the east part goes to the lake, the west part goes to the wetlands, which actually has got a little pond, and it goes to the channel on the south side.
Have you checked with the DNR regarding any permits that may be needed from them?
Yes, I did talk to the DNR last year, and they said when we're further into the project, I should give them a call. They want a complete plan set, and as part of that, I needed a conditional use permit to fill.
And are you aware of any state and federal requirements regarding building on this fill, and whether any documentation will be required to show the filled area is now suitable for construction?
We would follow tech standards from FEMA, and we would have River Valley testing or a testing company come and do the Proctor test. Sanderfoot Wind owns sheep's foot rollers, graders, backhoes, and all sorts of fun play toys that my son really liked when I took him out to their business yard. But they would do all the permits. Tom works on federal wind turbine projects, and so is Gary. So they're used, we're amateurs when it comes to rules. The federal government has a lot more.
If an approval is granted, when do you plan on starting this construction or filling?
It would be in a couple months, I would guess. They have to find a fill site or find a construction project where they could afford to truck the fill out to this area.
That's all the questions I have at this time. Correspondence?
Yep.
Get ahead of the game.
He's keeping me on track, too. I do have an email from Joe Balin, the DNR floodplain engineer, addressed to me. It says, Terry, the information I have indicates that the Sanderfoot property is in the floodplain, and being on a lake is considered a flood fringe floodplain district. The development on this property can take place if they follow the requirements in your ordinance for development in the flood fringe district. You had asked if a Lomar F was needed. The owner may want a Lomar F to possibly be removed from the requirements for obtaining flood insurance if they have a mortgage lender. I would encourage getting a Lomar F even if they are not concerned with flood insurance requirements. And then he provides the website from FEMA for Lomar Fs, which stands for Letter of Map Revision Due to Fill.
F
What
is
was
fill,
that?
right?
What was the letters?
LOMR
LOMR.
F.
LOMR.
Dash F. So it's a letter of map revision, and then the F means fill.
It's on here for
Okay. Note that the landowner needs to meet the most restrictive fill requirements, typically the fill requirements in your ordinance over the Lomar F fill requirements. And that's because the state is more restrictive than FEMA. If you need further clarification, please feel free to contact me. And that's signed Joseph R. Balin, Water Management Engineer from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And that's it for correspondence. I had actually asked for that because every time we do something new in the floodplain, I have to make sure I know what's going on too. So that's, and no one oh yes, we do have people registered to speak. I'm sorry. So, Dave, you can have a seat and we'll hear from other people.
I had one question. You're gonna have your regular meeting afterwards?
Yep.
Do you do new business first? Or does that come later on? And how, if we would hang them around to see the
It won't
decision-
take long.
They do the public hearing application.
I have my wife here, this is costing me big money by the hour, you know.
Yeah, right.
Have you been to
Thank you.
Silvercrest
I
yet?
told her it was gonna be fun so
Have you been to Silvercrest yet?
far. It hasn't been that much fun.
Did you get to eat at Silvercrest? Well, then you're good to
There
go.
you go.
She's gotta put up with the extra weight now.
So we have one person registered to speak, and that person is Fred Herman. Fred Herman here, would you come up and speak to, on the microphone?
Most of my questions have been answered already.
That's good.
That's very good questions. The only question I have at this point is, what is the total height you're gonna put above where it already exists? Say 2.5 feet?
Commission would
I drove by, but I couldn't,
There's 4 stakes with ribbon on them.
Yeah.
That's the area on the map, the 174 acres, and the average fill is about 2.5 feet. And if you look at the gauge, Tony forgot a gauge, that's about how high it's going to be back in that property.
and you're gonna,
I don't envision filling 1.4 acres.
and you're gonna taper that back to what, where you
Excuse
fill
me,
the fill line?
excuse me, can you please address the committee?
Excuse
And
me.
then Dave can offer his
All right.
answers in a rebuttal. It just doesn't work real well to
That was my
go that-
question.
go that
And
route.
the other question I had was, what might flow into the lake or into the adjoining channels? You already asked that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another person who has registration slip here to speak, and it's Keith Schrader.
Evening again. As stated before, I got the 60 acres across the street from this property. And I got no problem with them filling it in, building something. Okay? The only thing is, I know when I applied for permits to put ponds and do work on my farm there, you gotta file for another permit. It's to have them come out and inspect for endangered species, plant life, wildlife, and creatures. That tells you can fill or not to fill. And it's amazing what we have in that corner of the lake. And that could be the thing that skews it one way or the other. And because we got the Blandings turtles there that are on the endangered species list, and we got all kinds of plant life. That's the only thing I learned when I had my property. But as far as somebody's going to build there someday, and it's got to be done right, and I think it will be. But that's the only other thing I had was the permit for the wildlife one. I thought I had it all done, and I had to have the DNR come out, and it's pretty interesting. That's all I have.
And
Applicant have any questions or rebuttal? Oh, staff comments, I'm sorry. Staff comments?
yes, got it. I'm gonna go there.
Okay.
Now we're looking for some comments from the staff.
Okay,
Terry?
so this is another conditional use permit. It's part of the shoreline zoning code requirements. It's a state requirement with shoreline zoning, so it's a conditional use so that you look at this a little bit closer. You can fill and grade within 300 feet of the ordinary high water mark of a lake without a permit, provided you don't do anything else, like take out the vegetation that you're not supposed to, or fill in a wetland. When it's between 2,000 and 10,000 square feet, you can do it with a land use permit, a zoning permit, through our office. And, we again will look at all those things. But once you exceed 10,000 square feet, which no matter whether you build 1 or 2 houses is probably still going to exceed that because of the driveway and everything, then you need the conditional use permit. And that requires a public hearing. So that's what we're doing here tonight. And again, it's the landowner's responsibility to provide the information that shows the committee that this is, going to be handled properly and that it's still going to be in keeping with the surrounding land uses and properties. When the committee visited the property, they noted that the site was very well staked and that the maximum boundary of the filling project as well as the height necessary to meet floodproofing criteria were noted. They also noticed that if suitable measures are taken and the applicant complies with the staking as noted on June 15th, as well as following all applicable stormwater and erosion control best management practices, the project should not endanger the lake or the wetlands. They also noticed that fairly good vegetation exists along the lake shore and that the driveway could be a little wider to make it safer and provide for proper access by larger vehicles during the proposed construction. And that was it for my comments. Now the rebuttal.
Yes, if the applicant has a rebuttal, please.
The first question is regarding the grading, how we're going to blend it in. And we have a 75-foot setback from the lake, and the code allows me to start filling at 35 feet back. So from 35 to 75, we're gonna fill 2.5 feet. So if you think 35 feet over, I'm at the floor, and in 35 feet, I'm this high. It would blend right in, and we're not increasing the runoff because we're not adding any hard surface at this time. If the buildings are too big, DNR code kicks in for stormwater and all sorts of other things. The NOI grading permit for the DNR used to be simple, it was one page, but they made it streamlined and put it on the internet now, and it's a 9-page form, and it takes me over a day of an engineer to fill it out, and the wildlife protection is one part of it. They also do Indian village checks and burial grounds, so we work with the DNR, and they go through all the departments. I tried to get into the State Historical Society website where they go and check some of these items, and to belong to that website years ago was $6,000 a year. So we let the DNR do this. A lot of times they will have if they're not too busy, they will do a preliminary consultation before you start a project for grading. And Gary owns the land, so we will follow up if we get the permit on doing whatever it takes. Again, Gary's in no hurry, obviously, since he's owned it since '92, and if he's gonna find a buyer, he doesn't wanna have any problems with that buyer. So I apologize before I said a LOMA F. LOMA is letter of map amendment. LOMAR is got a $425 or $450 charge. A LOMA is free. So we're gonna get a $400 or some charge for FEMA to look at our project. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, might I ask a question?
You may.
After we left yesterday, I was noticing we talked about having the driveway maybe a little bit wider. And the ambulances that we have, if you had to get one in there, they're kind of heavy, and it was really soft coming in. Are you planning on putting any more fill on the driveway? And if so, how close is that to the wetlands?
Gary addressed that with the county highway commissioner, and we would be doing the permit through them. And as part of the application, I was filling the driveway to the flood protection area. We have to get it up, and we'd be putting enough gravel to make it wide enough so there's no problems. And it's gonna be paved too. That does help add a lot of stability. And if it's still soft, we could put a fabric down under the gravel, because there will be no sewer or water lines or anything else out there to interfere with it. It's one of the things in my notes to bring the driveway a little bit wider. And I'm sure if they would ever built out there, they would have made it wider.
Thank you.
I also have a question about the driveway. If you sell 2 lots, will it be a shared driveway or 2 separate driveways?
I would not want to do two driveways. I would like to have
Driveway would
one shared driveway, and you would come towards the pond and take a right turn in the first lot, and the second lot could take that boundary line against the wetlands and drive down, and we would have a little berm or some landscaping in the way to separate the two, so headlights and the cars don't bother each other. But we're hoping we find one person that wants that piece of property.
Do they own all the way over to where it was mowed, to the northeast?
No, the driveway lot line is there, and Gary's good buddies with the neighbor, and I've already
Okay.
talked to him about if we need to do something, we can make that driveway work out. Because Gary thought he owned 30 foot further, and we had an agreement, and I think I won a Bud Light, because my surveyor marked it out when he did the stakes the other day.
That's what I thought the survey showed, but then I noticed that they were mowing further, and I thought, okay.
Gary's got a real nice mower, and I told him this to only mow your own stuff.